Hello, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that doesn't need to watch Stranger Things on Netflix. It's seen plenty of strange things with Sean Zambrunnen. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Pub Battles Marengo from Command Post Games. Pub Battles Marengo from Command Post Games is a game for 2 or more players in which the players take on the roles of the combatants during this key battle in the rise of Napoleon in 1800. One player or players will take on the role of the Austrians, while others will take on the role of the French. The game board takes place on a map of the battlefield. Now, it's not a hex game. You don't have the board divided up into areas or spaces or regions to control. It's literally a map. And what you're going to do then is each side is also going to get a number of little blocks, kind of rectangular blocks that represent your various regiments and your units in battle. Of course, you've got infantry, artillery, and cavalry units. Now, each of these blocks are kind of tied to their core commander. Now, their core commander has their own little kind of chit and their own little kind of command HQ that kind of has to follow them in order to activate the regiments. Now, there's a setup to the game. Of course, the French are going to set up kind of on the right side of the board, the Austrians on the left, and you've kind of got a space where you can deploy your units as you see fit. The French have units that kind of come in, I think on game turn 4, they're reinforced with another corps. And then what you do is you take both the Austrian and the French kind of chit, corps commander chits, and you place them in a cup. You can kind of use the end of the tube that the game comes in. And what you do is you, of course, are going to draw those chits one at a time to see which corps is activated. So you never know whose turn is coming up next. It could be yours, you could go 2 or 3 times in a row, or your opponent, you can go back and forth. It's all kind of kooky like that. Now, when your chit is activated, you can go ahead and actually move your one of your regiments or all the regiments from that particular corps. Now, movement in this game is very interesting. You have 2 kind of chain strings, and they're divided into kind of 3 parts each. You have kind of a longer chain, which is kind of your cavalry movement, and then you have your shorter chain, which is your infantry movement. Now, movement in this game is kind of your currency, too. It's kind of what you spend in order to do things. So you can, if you cross certain terrain, of course you're going to lose, a third movement, in which case you can only go 2/3 of the movement. But as you turn, you can also face. You also get a free facing. If you want to do a second facing, then that's going to cost you, again, a third of a movement. But what you can do is, if you're kind of marching in column along roads, you can actually kind of bend the string to match the actual road that you're looking at, and then kind of move along that. Of course, your cavalry has greater range. They can move further than your infantry can. And, of course, you have artillery, which instead of moving can do kind of a bombardment action. Again, you measure kind of the distance with the, I believe it's the infantry chain. You see if other units are in range, and you can kind of do a bombardment roll against your enemies. Now, one of the things that can happen, though, is if you pull out a chit that belongs to you, your opponent can then try to essentially kind of seize control. They can attempt to essentially gain the initiative, steal the march on you. Each side has an initiative. I think the French have the greater initiative, the better chance for the roll. But what you're going to do is, if your opponent draws one, but you really want to move your guy first, you can say, okay, this corps commander is going to try to steal a march on you. You roll the die, and if you get the correct die roll number, then it's a 6-sided die, and you got nearly a 50-50 chance, I think, for the French, and I think it's like slightly less for the Austrians. You can then go ahead and activate your guy instead, but you can only try to do that once with each of your corps commanders during a round. Now, what you're trying to do, of course, is maneuver your units into contact with each other. You actually want them touching. When they're touching, they are in contact. Now, if you move an infantry piece up against another infantry piece, of course, you kind of rationalize that. You kind of move them right up against each other. You can bring in another unit for support there. And how that works is if you get one block up against the guy, you can bring up another block, another infantry block, say, up against behind your guy for support, and I'll explain that in just a minute. You can also bring up artillery behind them to give you artillery support as well. Now, there's not a simultaneous combat here, so essentially the attacker, when he moves up there, he is going to roll his die against his enemy. He's going to go ahead and roll the die, and depending on, I think it's a 50-50 shot here. If he rolls like a 4, 5, or 6, if I recall, the enemy takes a hit. If, however, you have artillery support, you have artillery right behind you, then the defender actually gets to fire first. What happens is if you take a hit, you actually kind of flip your unit so the sticker's face up. Now, normally the sticker's facing you, so you got kind of a fog of war thing going on. But with the sticker's facing you, you take a hit, you actually flip it up. Now, it's kind of like disorganized. If he gets hit again, he has to retreat. He retreats, I think it's I can't remember, I think it's a third or 2/3 of the way back from the combat. And then if he gets hit again, he is destroyed. So essentially you got 3 hits for your units here. Now, if you are in battle and you've got support of another infantry unit behind you, if that one infantry unit, of course, has to retreat or is killed, that second infantry unit just moves right up into the battle and keeps the battle going. Now, during the course of the battle, too, you can get flanked. A unit can kind of hit the side of one of your units. If that happens, of course, then you kind of have to, and that unit can get flanked, you kind of have to go in order. Okay, well, what unit is going to fire first here, and how does that affect the battle? And you've got kind of a little description in there of exactly how you would resolve this kind of multifaceted battle there. Now, of course, you do have all sorts of modifiers. With terrain, it's going to maybe give you, a +1 or -1 to your roll. Again, as I say, flanking will give you modifiers to your roll. There's all sorts of other little things here that are going to kind of influence exactly how these rolls work out and how the battle, how the course of the battle unfolds. Now, you have to have, as I say, your in order to attack with your units, you have to be within a certain distance of your command HQ. So you got to move these command HQs, forward. Now, there's no real danger here. Command HQs can't be killed; they can't be overrun. So you're just trying to keep these things close. But where they are in the battlefield is important because sometimes your units will be kind of spread out, and if they're not near that command block, you can't attack with them. That's a very important thing. Where are you going to place that command block in order to be able to maximize your striking power? One of the things, too, is if a unit is disorganized, it's flipped up. If they're near the command HQ as an action instead of movement or attacking, you can actually rally, flip it back to the right face up in order to hit again. If half of the units in that core have been destroyed, you can no longer rally. There's bigger problems going on with the core command. So you go ahead, you take turns taking chits out of the cup and resolving all the movement. When all that's done, all the movement and combat, you go ahead and put the chits back in and you go again. You keep going through these rounds a total of 8 times, in which case, if no one is destroyed, you kind of count up the whoever's got the most units destroyed is the loser, and whoever inflicted the worst casualties is the winner. But if at any time before that you destroy 50% of your enemy's army while still keeping your own above 50%, then you are the winner of Pub Battles Marengo. So Pub Battles Marengo is an interesting game, and first of all, let me just say this. It is a beautiful game. This is a beautiful game. That map for this is, I'd seen pictures of it and I thought it looked good. It is beautiful. Good texture. It's a play mat, and it rolls up, and it is just gorgeous. This is the kind of game board you want to frame, but then you kind of miss the tactile feel. It's fantastic. This is one of the best game boards, mats, whatever you want to call it, I've ever played. I love it. And I love the fact, kind of thematically, it feels like you're moving units on a map. I mean, this is kind of one of the areas in the game excels. You really get that sense of, where generals sipping wine, 10 miles behind the battle lines saying, okay, we want this guy to move here, we want this guy to move here. Very good, very interesting. I know one of the conceits of the game is it says it kind of feels like a Napoleon Total War on a tabletop, and I actually recently just started playing Napoleon Total War, and I played some of the other Total War games. I just played Napoleon recently, and I really like that one. I don't know that it quite gives you the same feel. I mean, there's some superficial similarities, but it's not quite the same thing. But having said that, this game, being a tabletop game, is both something more and something less, and I'm not going to get into all the differences there. That's tedious. But this game is, as I say, you do get that really strong sense of being the general, moving your units on a map, and that's awesome. That's awesome. Combat is really quite simple, and that's, again, a positive thing and a negative thing. It's a good thing, fairly easy to learn, easy to play. At the same time, it is, you kind of want it a little more. 3 hits you're out. It's a 50-50 on a die roll. It's, I mean, there are modifiers and stuff, but you kind of, I kind of wanted a little bit more flavor, a little bit more pizzazz out of combat that wasn't here. So again, I think that's both a plus and a minus. If you're new to the game, learning it, it's great. If you are trying to teach it, and you know, if you're just looking for something kind of lighter like that, that's good. But the game's not really a super light game. It's not a real heavy game by any means. But I mean, for the dice combat, as light as it is, for the game as engaging as it is, I would have expected combat to be a little bit more engaging as well. It's not. It's not bad, but it just doesn't give you that punch there. Having said that, there is still some. There's strategy here. I love the HQs, how you have to. I mean, the game I was playing recently, the one you're seeing in the video. Like, you know, I had units that were clear off in the distance, and I'm trying to coordinate an attack, and I can't because they're nowhere near my HQ. So the whole game, I'm trying to get them closer and closer to my HQ in order to do that attack. And it was very intense, and it was, you know, and I couldn't do it. And ultimately, the French lost. So it was, but it's very well done in that sense. You know, kind of. The confusion, the urgency of deployment in the battlefield, I really like that quite a bit. Now, my biggest criticism for this game, and it's not insignificant, is in the rules. Now, the rules, as I said, this is a very simple game. It's a very, when I say simple, I don't mean it's dumbed down at all, but I mean it's as I say, it's easy to learn and easy to play. The rules are. The rule book, of course, you know, little rule book sheets with like a one rule quick play thing, and then there's kind of a little, somewhat deeper, bigger rule book. They both fold up in this thing, paper rule books that fold up in the map. And there were some things that were just not explained well enough, and there were some things that were just, you know, we're scratching our heads. The whole marching in column thing along the roads and how it extends your movement, we're still a little unsure on how that works. I mean, obviously, you're not going to be moving all over the terrain and what have you, but just kind of going into it and out of it, it could have been explained better. And there are videos online that I've watched some of them that are explained by the company here, the creators here, on the system, and they're very good. But again, you know, that's great. It's a great supplement, but I like a good rulebook explanation. You know, if you watch the show, you know, rule books are a big deal with me, and I wish the rules have been a little bit clearer on some of these issues here as well. As I recall, there were one or two other little things that I don't remember off the top of my head. Just little things, you know, not things that kill this experience for me, but just enough that you're kind of like, I wish I'd have been better. Wish I'd have been a better presentation there. All told, this is a pretty fun game. I did enjoy it. I think I was maybe, as I say, with the combat, expecting a little bit more, and so I didn't get that out of it. I think some people will really take to this game, but at the same time, I think the simplicity in combat may not appeal to everyone. Maybe more hardcore wargamers, maybe not. But again, maybe people that are looking for a lighter experience, and they do like that kind of, you know, epic feel of, you know, the general sipping champagne behind the lines. I think that will appeal to a lot of people. So I'm going to say try it before you buy it, and I think some people will really get a kick out of it. Others, it'll just be a little bit too light for them. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Wargame Geek, on our Facebook page, or thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. We are The Discriminating Gamer, and I got to tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I'm thinking of writing an alternate history novel about a United States senator in the 1980s who decides that he is going to go ahead and overthrow the government because he's already conquered our hearts with his beautiful, beautiful voice. Now he will conquer the world. His name, Sonny Bonaparte.
Somebody help me on my feet again, and I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I'll be dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
The Discriminating Gamer, proudly serving the board game community for 14 years. In dog years.